perfect families don't exist. I learned that truth watching my father practice his mayoral campaign speech in front of our antique mirror, his face twisted into that practiced smile that never quite reached his eyes. The same smile he wore now, standing at the head of our mahogany dining table, raising his crystal wine glass. To family unity, he proclaimed, his voice carrying that familiar authoritative tone that had echoed through my childhood, and to new beginnings. I lifted my glass mechanically, the wine bitter on my tongue. Across the table, my twin sister Samantha beamed, her perfect posture and designer dress the mirror image of our mother. Next to her, Oliver adjusted his tie, looking every bit the successful lawyer he pretended to be. "Michelle," my mother's voice cut through my thoughts, sharp as a blade. "Do fix your posture, dear. We're not at one of your creative gatherings." I straightened, catching Tom's sympathetic glance from beside me. His presence, in his clean but clearly non-designer shirt, was like a breath of fresh air in this suffocating room. "As I was saying," my father continued, "this mayoral campaign represents not just my ambitions, but our family's legacy. We must present a united front. The Sanders name carries weight in this town, and with it comes responsibility." The words washed over me like a familiar tide of expectations and obligations. I nodded at appropriate intervals, playing my part in this carefully orchestrated performance. But then something changed. My father's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his practiced smile faltering for just a moment. "Excuse me," he said, stepping into his study. "Important campaign business." Perhaps it was the wine, or maybe just 27 years of suppressed rebellion, but I found myself drifting toward the study door, which hadn't quite closed properly. "Listen carefully," my father's voice hissed, all pretense gone. "We had an agreement. That file stays buried, or things will get very unpleasant for both of us. Do you understand?" My heart hammered against my ribs. I'd never heard that tone from him before. Cold, threatening, almost cruel. "Everything all right, Michelle?" Oliver's voice made me jump. He stood too close, his cologne overwhelming, his smile as practiced as my father's. "Just getting some air," I said, stepping back. Something in his eyes told me he knew better. Back at the table, the conversation continued as if nothing had happened. Samantha chatted about wedding plans, my mother nodded approvingly, and Tom squeezed my hand under the table, sensing my unease. "I've always believed," my father announced, returning to his seat, "that family is everything. We protect our own, don't we?" "Of course, Daddy," Samantha agreed immediately. I stared at my plate, the perfectly arranged food suddenly unappetizing. The man at the head of the table wasn't the father I thought I knew. That phone call had cracked something open, revealing shadows I couldn't unsee. "Michelle?" My father's voice carried a note of expectation. "Don't you agree?" I looked up, meeting his gaze. For the first time, I saw something there that made my skin crawl, a warning, perhaps, or a threat. "Yes," I heard myself say, the lie tasting worse than the wine. "Family is everything." Later that night, as Tom drove me home, I couldn't shake the memory of that phone call, of that unfamiliar cruelty in my father's voice. My phone buzzed, a text from Samantha. "Wasn't it a lovely evening? Daddy was so happy." I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the reply button. The perfect Sanders family facade was cracking, and beneath it lurked something dark and ugly. The question was, what was I going to do about it? 3 days after that dinner, I sat in Samantha's pristine downtown office, watching her arrange her designer pen collection while I gathered courage to speak. The city skyline stretched behind her, a perfect backdrop for the perfect daughter's perfect life. "You're being ridiculous," she said before I could start. Daddy would never threaten anyone. I know what I heard, Sam. I leaned forward, my reflection fractured in her glass desk. That wasn't a campaign call. He was threatening someone about a file. She aligned another pen, this one in metallic gold. You've always had an overactive imagination. Remember when you convinced yourself Mrs. Peterson next door was running a cult? We were 12, and she did have weird midnight gatherings. They were book club meetings. Samantha finally looked up. Her face, my face with better makeup, set in that familiar expression of patronizing concern. Look, Daddy's under a lot of pressure with the campaign. The last thing he needs is you spinning conspiracy theories. The words stung precisely as she intended. Oliver was hovering by the study door that night. Did you notice that? Something flickered across her features. So brief I almost missed it. Fear? Uncertainty? But then her professional mask slipped back into place. Oliver was being polite, checking if Daddy needed anything. Since when does your fiancé play errand boy? Stop it. Her voice cracked slightly. Just stop. Everything's finally perfect. The campaign, the wedding plans, my promotion. Why do you always have to dig up problems? I stood up, my chair scraping against the polished floor. Because someone has to look past the surface, Sam. When did you become so afraid of the truth? When did you become so determined to destroy our family? She turned to the window, but I caught her reflection, the slight tremor in her jaw, the way her fingers curled into fists. I'm trying to protect you? From what? Our successful father? My wonderful fiancé? Your paranoia is getting out of hand. The door opened and Oliver stepped in, his timing too perfect to be coincidental. Everything all right, ladies? I thought I heard raised voices. Everything's fine, Samantha said quickly. Too quickly. Oliver's smile didn't reach his eyes. Michelle, always a pleasure. Though shouldn't you be at work? Or does freelancing mean unlimited coffee breaks? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Tom. Found something. Meet me at the shop. Important. I need to go, I said, gathering my bag. At the door, I turned back. Sam, just be careful, please. She didn't respond, but I saw Oliver's hand settle on her shoulder, possessive and controlling. The sight made my stomach turn. Tom's auto shop was a welcome change from the sterile office tower. He was under a vintage Mustang when I arrived, but rolled out immediately at the sound of my footsteps. Remember how you asked me to look into your dad's old business ventures? He wiped his hands on a rag, leading me to his office. Well, my mother still has connections at the school board. She found something interesting. He pulled up an old newspaper article on his computer. The headline read, Local Education Initiative Collapses, Investors Left in the Dark. This was 7 years ago, Tom explained. Your father was involved in a private education venture. It went bankrupt under suspicious circumstances, and look who handled the legal proceedings. My breath caught. There, in a grainy photo, stood Oliver Grant, looking younger but wearing the same calculated smile. They knew each other, I whispered. Before Samantha, before everything. They've been working together. Tom squeezed my shoulder. There's more. The missing file your father mentioned? I think it might be connected to this. The bankruptcy proceedings were sealed, which is unusual for a private education venture. I stared at the screen, pieces clicking into place. Oliver's not just marrying into our family by chance, is he? Doesn't look like it. My phone buzzed again, another text from Samantha. I'm sorry about earlier. Maybe you're right. Can we talk? I showed Tom the message. What do I do? He studied it for a moment. Be careful. If we're right about this, you're dealing with people who've been playing a very long game. I nodded, typing a response to my sister while my mind raced with possibilities. Whatever game our father and Oliver were playing, they hadn't counted on one thing. They weren't the only ones who could dig up the past. The sealed bankruptcy files were like a splinter in my mind, impossible to ignore. I'd spent a week digging through public records, following paper trails that seemed to lead nowhere. Then Margaret, Tom's mother, called with news that changed everything. "The school board keeps backup records," she said, her voice crackling over the phone. "Someone tried to delete the originals, but they missed these. Michelle, it's worse than we thought." 2 hours later, I sat in her kitchen, staring at documents spread across her worn oak table. The numbers didn't lie. My father and Oliver had siphoned millions from the education venture, leaving dozens of teachers unemployed and hundreds of students stranded mid-semester. "Your father was clever," Margaret said, tapping a document. "He used shell companies, made everything look legitimate. But Oliver, he got sloppy, left a paper trail." My hands shook as I gathered the evidence. "I need to confront him." "Michelle." Margaret's hand covered mine. "Be careful. Men like Oliver don't take kindly to being exposed." I found him at his law office, working late as usual. His secretary tried to stop me, but I pushed past her, my heart thundering against my ribs. Oliver looked up from his desk, that practiced smile already in place. "Michelle, what an unexpected pleasure." I dropped the files on his desk. "7 years ago, you helped my father steal millions from an educational project. Want to tell me why?" His smile didn't waver, but something cold crept into his eyes. "Those are serious accusations, and privileged information, I might add. Is that why you're marrying my sister? To keep your secrets safe?" He stood slowly, buttoning his suit jacket. "You know, Michelle, you've always been the problematic twin, never knowing when to leave well enough alone." He walked to his office door, closed it softly. "Your father warned me about you. Stay away from my sister." "Or what?" He picked up the files, flipped through them casually. "You'll expose us? Destroy your father's campaign? Break Samantha's heart?" He leaned closer, his cologne suffocating. "Think carefully about your next move." "I already have." I pulled out my phone, showed him the recording icon. "Every word, Oliver, every threat." For a moment his mask slipped. Rage flashed across his features, transforming him into something ugly and familiar. The same expression I'd seen on my father's face during that phone call. "You stupid girl." His voice was barely a whisper. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. Your father and I built something valuable from those ashes. The connections we made, the influence we gained, it's all part of a bigger picture. A picture built on theft and lies." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Ask yourself this: if you expose us, what happens to Samantha's career? Her reputation? The Sanders name might mean nothing to you, but it's everything to her." My phone buzzed, a text from Tom. "Where are you? Not safe. Get out now." "You're right about one thing," I said, backing toward the door. "The Sanders name means nothing to me, not anymore." "Think about tomorrow's headline," Oliver called after me. "Mayoral candidate's daughter makes false accusations. Who do you think they'll believe? The respected lawyer and university dean, or the rebellious daughter with a history of causing trouble?" I made it to the elevator before my legs gave out. My phone buzzed again. Samantha this time. "Where are you? Oliver just called. He's worried about you." The doors opened to reveal my father standing there, his campaign smile firmly in place. "Michelle," he said, stepping inside, "we need to talk about your recent activities." As the doors closed, trapping me with him, I realized Oliver's warning hadn't been a threat. It had been a promise, and now I was about to discover exactly what I was dealing with. My father pressed the emergency stop button. "You've become a liability," he said, his voice eerily calm. "And in this family, We deal with liabilities very carefully. The elevator hung suspended between floors, and with it, my last illusions about the man I'd called father for 27 years. The bruises on my wrists from my father's grip in the elevator had faded, but the memory hadn't. 3 days of hiding at Tom's place, jumping at shadows, wondering if every passing car belonged to Oliver or my father. The evidence sat in a safety deposit box downtown. My insurance policy, Tom called it. Margaret brought coffee and newspapers each morning, her face growing grimmer with each campaign headline. Today's read, Sanders leads polls, family values platform resonates. You could leave town, she suggested, not for the first time. Start fresh somewhere else. I watched Tom through the window, working on his beloved Mustang. And let them win? Better than letting them hurt you. My phone lit up with Samantha's 20th message. Please come home. We can fix this. The doorbell rang. Tom dropped his wrench, moving quickly toward the house, but I was already opening the door. My mother stood there, perfectly coiffed as always, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. Michelle? Her voice wavered. We need to talk. I let her in, noting how her eyes darted around Tom's modest living room, lingering on the mismatched furniture and motor magazines. Your father is worried sick, she started. Worried I'll expose him, you mean? She flinched. There are things you don't understand. Compromises we've made. Compromises? I laughed, the sound harsh even to my ears. Is that what we're calling fraud now? Your father did what was necessary. She opened her bag, removed an envelope. Oliver prepared these papers, signed them, and everything can go back to normal. Inside were non-disclosure agreements, thick with legal jargon. My hands shook as I read. You want me to sign away my right to ever speak about what they did? I want to protect this family. Her mask cracked slightly. You don't know what they're capable of. What do you mean? She glanced at Tom, who stood protectively in the doorway, then back to me. Oliver, he has connections, dangerous ones. The education project wasn't just about money. Mom, sign the papers, Michelle. Please. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Before someone gets hurt. The front door opened again. Margaret entered, stopping short at the scene before her. My mother straightened, composing herself. Carol Sanders, Margaret said coldly. Still doing Richard's dirty work, I see. Margaret Reynolds, my mother's tone matched hers. Still interfering in other people's families. Someone has to protect these girls since their own mother won't. My mother stood clutching the unsigned papers. You don't know anything about protecting family. I know your husband and Oliver destroyed my teaching career over those missing files. Margaret's revelation hit like a physical blow. Did you know that, Michelle? After I reported the irregularities, I was blacklisted from every school in the district. The pieces clicked into place. Margaret's early retirement, her determination to help me. My mother's face had gone pale. I'm sorry, Margaret, she whispered, but you don't understand what's at stake now. Then explain it, I demanded. What are they really involved in? Instead of answering, she headed for the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. Samantha's engagement party is tomorrow night. Oliver insisted on announcing it early, given the circumstances. She looked back, her eyes filled with something that might have been fear. Don't come, please. After she left, I stared at the papers she'd left behind. Tom picked them up, reading through them with a mechanic's precision. These aren't just NDAs, he said finally. They're a confession. If you signed, you'd be admitting to making false accusations for personal gain. My phone buzzed again, not Samantha this time, but Oliver. Your mother delivered my message. Choose wisely. I looked at Tom, then Margaret, thinking of my mother's fear and my father's threats. The truth about their corruption could destroy them, but the cost might be higher than I'd imagined. The engagement party, I said slowly. That's where everything connects. Oliver's rushing it for a reason. Michelle, Margaret warned, don't. I need to be there. I picked up my phone, typing a response to Oliver. Time to end this game. The engagement party glittered with false promises. Crystal chandeliers cast shadows across familiar faces, turned strange, while waiters circulated with champagne that cost more than my monthly rent. I adjusted the recording device hidden beneath my dress, feeling the weight of the evidence in my clutch. Samantha spotted me first. She broke away from a cluster of well-wishers, her designer dress rustling as she approached. You shouldn't be here. You texted me 20 times asking me to come home. That was before. She glanced over her shoulder at Oliver, who watched us from across the room. Things are complicated now. They're about to get more complicated. I pulled out the bankruptcy documents. Did you know about this? Her fingers trembled as she took the papers, her engagement ring catching the light. Michelle, please, not tonight. When then? After you marry him? After he and Dad destroy more lives? You don't understand. Her voice cracked. Oliver explained everything. The bankruptcy was necessary. Those teachers, including Margaret, they were involved in something dangerous. Dad and Oliver protected the school. Is that what they told you? I studied my sister's face, seeing the doubt beneath her practiced smile. Or is that what you need to believe? Oliver materialized beside us, sliding an arm around Samantha's waist. Ladies, you're attracting attention. Good. I raised my voice slightly. Let's attract more. Tell everyone how you and my father— Careful, Oliver interrupted, his smile never wavering. Your mother warned you about consequences. Are you threatening me at your own engagement party? I'm reminding you that family loyalty goes both ways. He took the documents from Samantha's hands. Speaking of loyalty, did you know your boyfriend's been looking into offshore accounts, following money trails he shouldn't? My heart stopped. What did you do? Nothing yet. Tom's garage is struggling, isn't it? Be a shame if his licenses were revoked, or if Margaret's pension suddenly disappeared. Samantha's face went pale. Oliver, you said no one would get hurt. No one has to get hurt. He tucked the documents into his jacket. Right, Michelle? Before I could respond, my father's voice boomed through the speakers. If I could have everyone's attention— He stood on the small stage, campaign smile firmly in place. Tonight, we celebrate not just love, but family. Oliver isn't just marrying my daughter. He's joining our legacy of service to this community. The crowd applauded. I watched my mother dab at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, the perfect picture of maternal joy. But her hands shook. Michelle! Samantha grabbed my arm. There's something you need to know about the education project. It wasn't just money laundering. They were moving other things through the school accounts. Dangerous things. What things? I've seen documents. In Oliver's office. Dad's not just running for mayor to boost his ego. They need someone in position to— Samantha, Oliver's voice cut through the applause. Your father's waiting. She squeezed my arm once, hard, then pulled away. I watched her join Oliver on stage, accepting congratulations and playing her part perfectly. My phone buzzed. A text from Tom. Got into the offshore accounts. You need to see this. But Michelle, be careful. These aren't just local connections. Another buzz. An unknown number. Miss Sanders, we know what you're doing. Last warning. Walk away. I looked up to find my father staring at me from the stage, his expression unreadable. Oliver whispered something in Samantha's ear, making her laugh, but her eyes were desperate when they met mine. The recording device felt heavy against my skin. One press of a button and I could expose everything. But Oliver's threats echoed in my mind. Tom's garage, Margaret's pension, Samantha's safety. My mother appeared beside me, pressing a fresh glass of champagne into my hand. "It's not too late," she whispered, "to choose family." I watched Oliver kiss my sister for the cameras, saw my father shake hands with what I now knew were more than just campaign donors. The truth would destroy them all. But maybe that's what they deserved. I raised my glass. Decision made. Sometimes protecting family meant burning everything to the ground. The news broke like a thunderstorm. Headlines screamed across every local paper. Mayoral candidate's criminal past exposed. Sanders family linked to money laundering scheme. Education scandal rocks city. My recording from the engagement party, along with Tom's financial evidence, had done its work. I hadn't expected the fire at Tom's garage. "Total loss," the fire marshal said, standing in the smoking ruins. "Looks like an electrical fault, but we'll investigate." Tom's face was ash-streaked as he surveyed his destroyed livelihood. "Everything's gone. The cars, the equipment, my clients' projects." The message was clear. Oliver's warning made real. My phone hadn't stopped ringing since the story broke. Samantha's number flashed again, but I let it go to voicemail. The last time we spoke, she'd been hysterical, torn between gratitude for exposing Oliver and horror at the consequences. "Your father's at the station," Margaret said, appearing beside me. "They're questioning him about the offshore accounts." "Good. Michelle." Her voice softened. "They're questioning Tom, too, about insurance fraud." My stomach lurched. "That's impossible. He wouldn't." "Oliver's thorough. He's planted a paper trail." She handed me her phone, showing emails that seemed to implicate Tom in a scheme to burn down his own garage for insurance money. "They're coming to arrest him this afternoon." Tom approached, his shoulders heavy. "You should go, before they get here." "I'm not leaving you." "This isn't your fault," he said. But we both knew it was a lie. A sleek black car pulled up, and my father stepped out. He looked older, defeated, but his eyes burned with familiar anger when they met mine. "Are you happy now?" he demanded, crossing the debris-strewn lot. "You've destroyed everything. Your sister's engagement, my campaign, your mother's reputation. You destroyed those things," I shot back. "I just exposed the truth." "The truth?" He laughed bitterly. "You exposed nothing. Oliver's connections run deeper than you know. By tomorrow, every piece of evidence you gathered will be discredited. Tom will be in jail, Margaret's pension will vanish, and you'll be the troubled daughter who fabricated lies about her family for attention." Police sirens wailed in the distance. "Dad," I whispered, "please, don't let them take Tom." Something flickered in his eyes. Regret, maybe, or pity. "You chose this path, Michelle. Actions have consequences." The sirens grew closer. Tom squeezed my hand once, then let go. "Run," he murmured. I didn't run. I watched them handcuff him, reciting rites he already knew. Watched Margaret turn away, shoulders shaking. Watched my father climb back into his black car, leaving me standing in the ashes of my revenge. My phone buzzed. A text from Samantha. "Oliver's gone. Emptied our accounts. Dad knew he would. We were all just pawns." Another buzz. My mother. "Come home, please, before it's too late." Final buzz. Unknown number. "Ms. Sanders, perhaps now you understand the cost of justice. There's still time to recant your story." I stared at the messages until they blurred, thinking of Tom in handcuffs, of Margaret's lost pension, of Samantha's emptied accounts. My evidence discredited, my reputation destroyed, my loved ones suffering, all because I thought truth would be enough to fight power. The fire marshal approached, notebook in hand. "Ms. Sanders, we have some questions about your whereabouts last night." Of course they did. Oliver's web was complete. I'd tried to burn down my family's facade, but I'd only succeeded in burning everything else. My father's words echoed. Actions have consequences. I looked at the ruins of Tom's garage, smelling smoke and defeat. Sometimes the price of revenge isn't just burning everything to the ground. It's watching the flames consume the wrong things while the real monsters walk away unscathed. The marshal waited expectantly. In the distance, another police car approached. I had started this fire. Now I had to decide. Let it consume me or find a way to rise from the ashes. I found Samantha in our childhood treehouse, huddled in the corner like we used to hide during thunderstorms. The wooden planks creaked under my weight as I climbed in, the familiar scent of cedar mixing with rain. I kept everything, she whispered, pushing a box toward me. Every document, every transaction, every meeting Oliver had with Dad's connections. I was supposed to destroy them after the wedding. My hands trembled as I opened the box. You knew? All this time? I thought I could change things from the inside. Play their game, gain their trust. She laughed bitterly. I was just another puppet. Headlights swept across the treehouse. A car door slammed. They're here, Samantha said. Dad and Oliver. They tracked the missing files to my computer. We need to go. No, she grabbed my arm. I'm done running, done pretending. Footsteps crunched on wet grass. Our father's voice carried up. Girls, come down. Let's handle this like family. Family? Samantha called back, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. Like you handled Margaret's career? Or Tom's garage? That was business, Oliver's smooth voice replied. Nothing personal. Everything's personal. I pulled out my phone, pressed record. Every life you destroyed, every person you threatened. Our father appeared at the treehouse entrance, Oliver close behind. In the dim light, they looked almost identical, power wearing human skin. The evidence is gone, Oliver said. Your credibility's shot. What do you think that recording will accomplish? It's not for the public. Samantha stood, another phone in her hand. It's for your real partners, the ones who don't know you've been skimming from their accounts. Our father's face went pale. What are you talking about? I'm a financial analyst, Daddy. Did you really think I wouldn't notice the patterns, the missing millions? Oliver's been playing both sides, using your connections to build his own power base. Oliver's smooth facade cracked. Richard, she's lying. Show them, I said. Samantha pressed a button. Numbers filled her screen. Transactions, dates, accounts. I sent copies to everyone. Your partners, your rivals, the FBI. Should be hitting their inboxes right about now. Oliver lunged for the phone. Our father grabbed him, surprising us all. You used me? He snarled. Used my family? Like you used everyone else, I cut in. The teachers, the school, your own daughters. We learned from the best, didn't we, Dad? Sirens wailed in the distance. Oliver wrenched free, scrambled down the ladder. Our father watched him run, something like pride mixing with fury on his face. You'll destroy everything, he said quietly. No. Samantha moved to stand beside me. We're just starting over, the right way. The sirens grew closer. Our father looked at us, really looked at us, for the first time in years. I wanted to give you everything. You gave us chains, I said. We're choosing freedom. He nodded slowly, then turned and walked away. We watched from the treehouse as police cars flooded the driveway, as Oliver was caught trying to scale the back fence, as our father surrendered quietly on the front lawn. Our mother appeared below, looking up with tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, she called. I should have been stronger. Samantha squeezed my hand. We all should have been. Later, as dawn broke over our shattered family's estate, we sat in the treehouse watching federal agents cart away boxes of evidence. Tom's lawyer called. All charges dropped. Margaret's pension was being reinstated. "What happens now?" Samantha asked. I thought about revenge, about justice, about the fine line between the two. "We rebuild, not their way, our way." She nodded, understanding. The truth hadn't just exposed our family's corruption, it had freed us from it. Sometimes protecting family meant destroying the lies that bound it together. The sun rose higher, casting long shadows through the treehouse slats. For the first time since this all began, they didn't look like prison bars anymore. The Sanders estate sold for less than market value, its pristine facade unable to hide the scandal's taint. I stood in my father's empty study, running my fingers over the mahogany desk where he'd built his empire of lies. The room still smelled of his cologne and power. "Found this in the safe," Samantha said from the doorway, holding a worn leather journal. Mom's writing. The pages were filled with our mother's elegant script, dreams and regrets bleeding together across decades. One entry caught my eye. "The girls are 5 today. Michelle questions everything, while Samantha watches and learns. Richard says this is a problem. I wonder if it's actually the solution." "She knew," I whispered. All along, she knew what we'd become. Samantha perched on the desk's edge. Did we do the right thing? Through the window, I watched Tom directing movers, his garage rebuilt with insurance money and community support. Margaret stood nearby, supervising the loading of boxes marked Sanders Family Trust, evidence heading to federal investigators. "We did the necessary thing," I said. My phone buzzed, a message from our father's lawyer. He'd accepted a plea deal, turning state's evidence against Oliver's broader network. Oliver himself had disappeared, leaving behind a web of shell companies and broken promises. "Mom's asking to see us," Samantha said quietly. "At the beach house. Are you going? Are you?" The journal's pages rustled between us, heavy with unspoken words. Our mother's final entry was dated the night of the engagement party. "My daughters are stronger together than Richard and I ever were apart. They'll burn it all down, but from the ashes, they'll build something true." The doorbell rang. Prospective buyers for the estate. We left the study, our footsteps echoing through empty halls once filled with perfect lies. Family portraits watched our exit, faces frozen in practiced smiles that now seemed more like grimaces. In the driveway, Tom wrapped an arm around my waist. "Ready?" I looked at my childhood home, remembering the dinner that started everything. The threat in my father's voice, the weight of expectations, the suffocating need to maintain appearances. "The beach house," I told Samantha. "Tomorrow." She nodded, understanding flowing between us like it had in the treehouse. Some bridges couldn't be rebuilt, but others could be redesigned, made stronger by acknowledging their flaws. Margaret approached, holding a small box. "Found this in the attic. Thought you might want it." Inside was a crude clay sculpture, 2 intertwined figures, barely recognizable as human. Samantha laughed. "Our 3rd-grade art project. Mom kept it." "Some things are worth preserving," Margaret said softly. I placed the sculpture in my bag, next to our mother's journal. The past couldn't be erased, but it could be understood, integrated into something new. The buyers emerged from the house, talking excitedly about renovation plans. They saw potential where we saw shadows, possibility where we knew secrets lay buried. "They'll make it their own," Samantha said, "like we're doing." She smiled, a real smile, not the perfect Sanders version we'd been taught. Exactly like that. We left separately, Samantha to her downtown loft, me to the small house Tom and I had bought near his rebuilt garage. The estate's gates closed behind us with a final resonant clang. Tomorrow, we'd face our mother, hear her story, decide what pieces of our old life were worth carrying forward. Some questions would remain unanswered, some wounds would never fully heal. But as I drove away, watching the Sanders estate shrink in my rearview mirror, I realized revenge hadn't been about destroying our family after all. It had been about destroying the lies that kept us from being one in the first place. The clay sculpture shifted in my bag, the intertwined figures still holding each other after all these years. Some bonds, I realized, were stronger than the forces trying to break them. And sometimes, the truest form of family emerged only after everything else burned away.
My sister-in-law unexpectedly invited me to be a bridesmaid at her upcoming wedding. Initially, I was surprised by the request since we hadn't been particularly close. Despite my initial hesitation, I accepted, thinking it would be a chance to strengthen our bond, especially since she expressed a desire to get closer. In the months that followed, I became actively involved in the wedding preparations and even organized her bachelorette trip to Bali. My family owns a travel agency manager, which made it easier for me to handle the arrangements. Sil was aware of this and asked me to plan the entire trip without any upfront payment from her end. She promised to settle the full amount after the wedding and even considered having me organize her honeymoon. Trusting in her word and our improved relationship, I funded the trip for her and the other bridesmaids entirely out of my own pocket. However, just 5 days ago, Sil abruptly disinvited me from the wedding. The reason? She felt threatened by my pregnancy, worried that it might draw attention away from her on her big day, even though I'm not showing yet. This decision was particularly hurtful considering the efforts and financial commitment I had made for her bachelorette party. Her actions made it clear that her earlier intentions to mend our relationship were superficial, primarily motivated by the benefits my family business could offer her. Now, with the wedding approaching and the bachelorette trip behind us, I find myself excluded from the festivities, my contributions seemingly forgotten. One morning, I woke up feeling terribly ill and ended up vomiting intensely. Concerned about my health, my husband and I promptly went to see a doctor. We were worried I might have picked up a stomach bug during our recent travels. However, the visit brought unexpected news. I was actually 5 weeks pregnant, and what I was experiencing was simply morning sickness. Nothing serious at all. Overjoyed by the revelation, we quickly shared the news with our close family members, who were all delighted for us, except for one person, Sophia. When we told her, her reaction seemed forced and insincere. At the time, we didn't dwell on it too much, as we were caught up in our own excitement. However, just days after returning from Sophia's bachelorette party, which I had organized and funded, she sent me a shocking message. She explained that she felt it necessary to uninvite me from her upcoming wedding, hoping I wouldn't be offended. I was stunned and hurt, especially since there was no clear reason for her sudden change in behavior. Attempts to reach her for an explanation were futile. She ignored both my calls and texts, and even my husband couldn't get through to her. After several days of silence, Sophia finally picked up one of my calls. Clearly annoyed, she demanded I stop calling her so frequently. I persisted, needing an explanation for her unexpected hostility. Abruptly, she revealed that she didn't want me at her wedding because my pregnancy might overshadow her as the bride. Shocked by her bluntness and the pettiness of her reasoning, I realized the timing of her decision, right after learning of my pregnancy, was indeed too suspicious to overlook. It saddened me deeply to see her act so insecurely, especially considering our close past interactions and all that I had contributed to her celebration. I felt rather exploited because of the entire ordeal surrounding the trip. After discussing it with my husband, I resolved that I was content to skip the event, and I planned to request that she repay all the money she owed me. My husband, equally distressed by how his sister had treated me, decided to communicate to her that he too would skip the event. Following our discussion, he messaged her explaining his decision to not attend due to her behavior and stressed the need for her to refund the money promptly. She responded within an hour, calling our demands unreasonable and justified her desire for my absence at the wedding on the grounds of my pregnancy, claiming it posed a risk. However, I was baffled by her fear since I wasn't visibly pregnant and no one would know unless I disclosed it myself. We intended to keep the pregnancy a secret, and even her parents, who were aware, would not discuss it. Moreover, we certainly knew better than to announce personal news at someone else's wedding. Thus, if anyone was being unreasonable, it was her. The situation escalated when my husband argued with her over the phone as she tried to persuade him to attend the wedding, ending on a sour note. My husband stood firm in his decision not to attend in support of how I was treated, and he informed his parents, who chose to remain neutral. Things worsened when Sophia disclosed the situation to her friends, leading some of them to withdraw from the wedding. After being removed from the bridesmaids group chat, I received messages from her friends expressing their support for me and criticizing Sophia's actions as foolish and petty. While I appreciated their support, I was also deeply hurt that Sophia discussed my pregnancy with others without consulting me, especially since I had wanted to keep it private. It seemed that even her cousin might now be aware due to her indiscretion in the group chat. When I discovered I was pregnant, my husband and I had intended to share the news at our own pace. Unfortunately, my cousin-in-law, who is also a bridesmaid, decided to share this personal detail without our consent. She sent several voice notes to her friends explaining the situation, and though these friends were not directly connected to our family or social circle, the news inevitably reached her cousin, who is part of the family. This breach of privacy worried us, as it could easily spread throughout the family before we were ready. Despite my efforts to contain the situation by asking her to keep the news private, she had already informed her parents. Thankfully, she agreed to ensure her parents wouldn't discuss it further. While the news of our pregnancy was undoubtedly exciting for the family, especially since my husband is a beloved figure and the eldest of his generation, we felt our privacy had been violated. Our disappointment deepened with Sophia, the cousin-in-law. Her indiscretion seemed needless, and it has strained our relationship. Currently, we're quite upset with her. Her upcoming wedding has added to the tension, as her friends, aware of the situation, have threatened to boycott the event unless she reconciles with me. She has since apologized and re-invited me to the wedding, but I find myself reluctant to attend. Adding to my reluctance is the realization that Sophia's previous kindness might have been motivated by her desire to have me organize her bachelorette trip, rather than genuine friendship. With all these issues weighing on me, attending her wedding feels increasingly uncomfortable. Currently, I find myself in a difficult position concerning my sister-in-law's upcoming wedding. After a series of unfortunate events, I feel unable to participate as a bridesmaid or even attend the ceremony. While I have no objections to my husband going without me or her friends supporting her, personally being there would be too uncomfortable. The issue has escalated because my husband insists on not attending without me, and her friends have expressed a similar sentiment. They are siding with me due to some unforgivable actions by my sister-in-law, despite the significant effort I've put into helping her, including organizing a trip. Now, she is desperate for me to attend, to the extent that even my in-laws have reached out, expressing how miserable she feels and her deep regret. They've asked me to consider forgiving her and attending to keep the peace. While part of me wishes I could let go of what happened, my feelings are too strong, and attending her wedding doesn't feel right. The best I can offer is to try to persuade my husband and her friends to be there in my stead, but this too is proving difficult. My husband has made it clear he will not attend if I'm not welcome, and he's so supportive that I find it hard to argue with him. I've attempted to encourage her friends to fulfill their bridesmaid duties, explaining that the issues between me and her should not impact her wedding. However, they seem reluctant and have avoided the topic, maintaining they are doing what they believe is right. Additionally, there are other underlying issues not directly related to our conflict, contributing to their reluctance. Her friends mentioned that she has changed significantly since getting engaged, adopting a demanding attitude that has strained relationships. They hesitated to discuss this with me initially, not wanting to seem like they were gossiping or exacerbating the situation further. Despite their long-standing friendships with her from high school and college, they find her recent behavior increasingly difficult to handle. With the wedding a week away, I'm at a loss for what to do. Am I wrong for not forgiving my sister-in-law and refusing to attend her wedding, even after her apologies and the clear emotional toll it's taking on everyone involved. I discussed these new revelations with her friends, and while it shed more light on their feelings, it has only added to the complexity of the decision I have to make. Lately, there has been a noticeable shift in her behavior. Over the past few months, she has increasingly shown a sense of entitlement. She frequently lost her temper over trivial matters and expected everyone to cater to her demands without showing any gratitude. I had observed some of these episodes myself during a bachelorette trip. There, she was not only rude to some of her friends but also to the hotel staff. I didn't give it much thought initially, as she treated me differently, likely because I was footing the bill and she couldn't risk upsetting me. However, looking back, I realized that this behavior was consistent. Her expectations reached a tipping point when she expected her friends to support her uncritically after a personal incident involving me. When they tried to explain that her actions were unjustified and that she owed me an apology, she lashed out at them too. Her refusal to listen was the last straw for many of her friends. They had endured her increasingly unbearable behavior for too long, and this final incident made them decide they no longer wanted to be around her. As a result, after a heated argument stemming from her conduct towards me, they chose not to attend the wedding. In my view, their decision is completely justified. I've tolerated her disrespectful behavior far less than they have, and I can't fault them for wanting to step back from the wedding. At this point, I doubt there's much I can do, other than possibly discussing it with my husband. I came to realize that her unpleasant behavior wasn't only directed at me, but was how she treated everyone. The reason she had been kind to me these past months was purely self-serving. She relied on me to plan and fund her bachelorette party, probably because she wasn't ready to shoulder the expense all at once, especially with the looming wedding costs. She was confident I'd cover her until she could repay me. But once the trip concluded, she saw no reason to maintain the facade, and her demeanor towards me shifted dramatically. Her transformation into a complete bridezilla was evident, and I no longer felt obligated to tolerate her actions. Although my in-laws were visibly disappointed by the unfolding events, they didn't voice any objections, which I appreciated. They were understandably upset, given it was their daughter's wedding, but they respected my decision to not attend. My husband also decided to skip the wedding, further complicating family dynamics. When I informed Sophia that we wouldn't be attending, she lashed out. She accused me of ruining her wedding and labeled me an attention seeker bent on revenge. Her words were harsh and personal, and normally, I would distance myself from such negativity. However, this time I responded, unable to let her baseless accusations stand. I reminded her that the turmoil was a result of her own actions, particularly after she uninvited me simply because I was pregnant. I also pointed out the significant amount of money I was owed for financing the bachelorette trip, a favor I did as family, which she dismissed as me being petty. Her reaction only highlighted her ingratitude and sense of entitlement, making it clear that my financial support during the bachelorette trip was taken for granted. Despite her attempts to trivialize the matter, the financial burden I shouldered was substantial, and I felt compelled to remind her of that. Her behavior was not only ungrateful, but also reflective of how little she valued the support and sacrifices of those around her. I had reached a point where I needed to address the way she had been treating me. It's a well-known saying, "Don't bite the hand that feeds you." So, I made it clear to her that her ingratitude was unacceptable. I even mentioned that I had been hesitant to attend her wedding given her recent behavior towards me and others, which seemed justified now. Initially, I had been persuading my husband to go to the wedding without me, so as not to spoil the event for her or her family, especially since I respect my in-laws who are genuinely kind people. However, I felt relieved when my husband chose not to go, as her actions showed she wasn't being reasonable or kind. During a heated exchange where she began using harsh words, I decided to end the call. I had already expressed everything I needed to and saw no value in continuing a fruitless conversation. Afterwards, I briefed my husband about the entire ordeal. He supported my decision, noting that while he usually prefers to avoid conflict, sometimes you need to stand your ground when someone consistently oversteps. I'm at peace with my words, regardless of her upcoming wedding. Following our talk, it became crystal clear that we would not be attending the wedding. I anticipate this decision might lead to uncomfortable questions for my husband's parents, but I'm comforted by the knowledge that I did everything within my power to manage the situation responsibly. It wasn't my fault things turned out this way. On another note, I recently had an enlightening conversation with Sophia's maid of honor, one of her oldest friends from middle school. She was probably the only person, someone I had never spoken to before, finally reached out to me today, catching me off guard. I never anticipated a call from her, but it seems she had a change of heart and chose to step up and do what's right. She affirmed she wasn't backing out of the wedding. Instead, she phoned to confirm my suspicions about Sophia using me for a trip. She began the call by admitting how tough it was to confront this issue since Sophia is her best friend. However, Sophia's recent actions were too drastic to ignore. Even though Sophia has always been somewhat privileged, her recent behavior was excessive. She reassured me that she would fulfill her role as the maid of honor at the wedding, but she planned to distance herself from Sophia afterward. Before we ended our conversation, she disclosed that she and Sophia had discussed me a few months back. Sophia knew I ran a travel agency manager with my parents and saw an opportunity to use that relationship to her advantage. She aimed to get close to me, hoping I'd organize and possibly fund the bachelorette trip, knowing she could delay repayment since I wasn't a regular travel agent. Realizing I was right about her motives was disheartening, but not surprising. I appreciated her honesty, especially knowing Sophia would never confess to such a scheme. After revealing the truth, she asked me to keep our conversation confidential, which I intend to honor. With the wedding already mired in enough drama, there's no need for me to stir more trouble. I recently spoke with my husband about a phone call concerning our friend Sophia, and it's quite disheartening to see her struggling to maintain friendships, particularly with her oldest friend. Her behavior has been concerning, and it doesn't seem like she's ready to recognize or address it. She appears to believe that being engaged gives her a free pass to mistreat others, without realizing that being under wedding planning stress doesn't excuse such actions. Unfortunately, she might have to face the repercussions of her actions the hard way. 5 days ago, Sophia got married, and neither we nor many of her other friends attended. It came to light that she had removed all of her bridesmaids the night before the wedding, leaving only her best friend and her cousin at the ceremony. The cousin attended more out of family obligation than desire, while her best friend stood by her as the maid of honor. It was no surprise to us, but it underscores a broader issue with her behavior. Many have questioned why we missed the wedding. We explained that I was quite ill with the stomach flu, and my husband needed to care for me. This explanation aligned with what our in-laws suggested. Now that Sophia and I have settled our financial dealings, it feels like a natural point to move on from this chapter. It seems mutual that neither of us will pursue a relationship moving forward. Instead, I'm choosing to focus on the joyous aspects of life, like my upcoming role as a mother. My husband and I are excited about our future, and I am dedicating my energy to embracing the positives as we prepare for our new addition to the family. Syl, overwhelmed by envy, took my daughter in an attempt to show me the consequences of having a child who might overshadow her own. Her actions, however, led her to spend the night in jail instead. My husband William and I have been married for 3 years, having met on a blind date arranged by friends. Initially skeptical about blind dates, I was pleasantly surprised when William and I immediately connected. What started as a casual outing blossomed into a deep, meaningful relationship. We found comfort and a natural ease in our conversations, discovering shared interests and values. Our connection deepened, and we soon began planning a future together. After several months of dating, William and I married in a beautiful ceremony surrounded by loved ones. Our wedding day was unforgettable, filled with laughter, joy, and love, and remains one of my happiest memories. From early in our relationship, William and I both dreamed of having children. We envisioned a lively home with the sounds of little feet and children's laughter filling the air. However, our path to parenthood proved difficult. Despite our best efforts, including tracking ovulation and making healthy lifestyle changes, we faced continuous disappointment. We couldn't fathom why pregnancy eluded us when we diligently followed every recommendation. Determined for answers, we consulted medical professionals, hoping for an explanation or a solution to our challenges. Our journey, marked by love and partnership, was a testament to our commitment to each other and our future as a family. When the medical results arrived, the doctors reassured us that everything was in order. There were no medical barriers for either of us. They explained that sometimes conception simply takes time. They encouraged us to remain patient and have faith in the natural process. This news brought us both relief and a sense of impatience. While it was comforting to know there were no health issues to overcome, the suggestion to just wait and see was fraught with uncertainty. Patience is indeed a virtue, but it can be challenging to uphold when you're yearning for something so deeply. William and I continued to hold on to our dream, imagining the day we would celebrate a positive pregnancy test. Last year, our perseverance was rewarded. It began subtly with a missed period, which I initially dismissed as stress or a minor illness. However, when my symptoms persisted, my best friend, Eliana, suspected what I hadn't yet allowed myself to consider. She arrived at my door with a collection of pregnancy tests, sparking a surge of excitement in both of us. As I took the first test, emotions overwhelmed me. The possibility of being pregnant filled me with an indescribable mix of hope and joy. When the test confirmed my pregnancy, disbelief and elation took over. Eliana and I were ecstatic, our celebration loud and joyous, as we embraced the reality of the moment. That evening, I wanted to make the revelation as memorable for William as it was for me. With Eliana's help, I prepared a simple yet heartfelt surprise at home. We adorned the living room with balloons and a small cake to mark the occasion. William returned home to the unexpected celebration and was momentarily baffled, humorously wondering if he had forgotten his own birthday. I couldn't help but smile broadly as I handed him the pregnancy test. Watching his expression evolve from confusion to realization and then to pure joy was unforgettable. He embraced me jubilantly, lifting me in a spirited hug as we celebrated the news that we were going to be parents. Throughout the pregnancy, each doctor's visit brought more joy, and I cherished each ultrasound photo, displaying them proudly on our fridge. These moments of shared happiness and anticipation strengthened our bond and deepened our excitement for the future. Every time I walked past our growing collage of photos, capturing moments from our shared journey, a burst of joy would fill my heart. It stood as a beautiful reminder of the new life flourishing within me. William and I, in eager anticipation of our daughter's arrival, devoted ourselves to crafting the perfect nursery. Together, we chose soothing colors and cozy furnishings, each piece selected with love, imagining the warmth it would bring to our little one's early days. Shopping trips became adventures as we picked out adorable baby outfits and essential gear like strollers and car seats, each choice made with deliberate care. As we hit the 16-week milestone, a significant marker in our journey, we decided it was the perfect time to share our joy with our family. Planning to make it memorable, we organized a small dinner at our home, inviting only our nearest family members, setting it up as a casual gathering with a surprise reveal. The night of the dinner was filled with the familiar warmth of family chatter. Unexpectedly, William's younger brother Mark arrived with his girlfriend, Layla. While surprised, since we expected only family, it was typical of Mark's impulsive nature, so we chose to let it slide without fuss. Layla, vibrant and outgoing, already had a child from a previous relationship and was quite a bit older than Mark. They had met recently at the gym and were noticeably inseparable, displaying their affection freely, much to the discomfort of some guests. Despite the distraction, William and I were resolute not to let anything overshadow our announcement. As dinner commenced, we shared a knowing look and William cleared his throat, capturing everyone's attention. "We have something to share with you all," he announced, his voice tinged with excitement. With eager faces turning towards us, we were ready to reveal our wonderful news. I shared our collection of ultrasound photos with everyone, revealing our big news with a beaming smile. "We're expecting." Initially, The room fell silent as they absorbed our announcement. Then, a wave of excitement burst forth. Everyone leapt from their seats, eager to embrace us, offering congratulations and sharing in our joy. The energy in the room was electric, filled with love and excitement. William's parents were overjoyed, celebrating the arrival of their first grandchild. Their eyes sparkled with pride and joy, knowing our journey had been challenging, and this news was a blessing. My own mother, teary-eyed, embraced me tightly, her voice quivering as she asked, "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Tears of joy rolled down my cheeks as I assured her, "Yes, Mom. I'm more than okay." My brother and his wife were equally thrilled, eager to offer tips for first-time parents. I admitted my nervousness and the tendency to overthink everything. My brother comforted me, sharing that he had felt the same before his daughter was born, his wife nodding in agreement. At that moment, surrounded by family, William and I felt our dream was finally coming true. The celebration was heartfelt, yet Layla's reaction stood out starkly. While others shared in our happiness, she remained seated, glaring at us with evident anger. Her aloofness was so conspicuous that I felt uneasy. When Mark approached to congratulate me, I whispered to him, asking about Layla's demeanor. He shrugged it off, implying it was typical behavior for her, not something to worry about. As the evening unfolded, we gathered in the living room for dessert and wine. I opted out of drinking, and William supported me by doing the same. Conversations flowed naturally towards babies and parenting. I shared details about the nursery we were preparing, proud of the cozy space we were creating. The night was filled with joy and laughter, a testament to the love and support of our family, making the occasion truly special. Throughout the entire planning phase for Riley's nursery, Layla had been notably quiet, barely contributing to the discussions. Suddenly, she expressed a desire to see the nursery. Her request surprised me, but considering she was also a parent, I thought she might offer some useful insights. Agreeing, I led her to the nursery. As we entered, I observed her closely and noticed her lack of enthusiasm. Instead of offering the expected suggestions, Layla began critiquing various aspects of the nursery. She complained that the room was too brightly lit for a baby's sleep environment, although I had already planned to install blackout curtains for that very reason. Unmoved by my explanation, she then criticized the yellow color scheme, suggesting a more neutral tone would have been appropriate. I defended our choice, explaining that the color choice was simply a preference and not tied to any gender stereotypes. Next, Layla turned her critique to the baby clothes we had chosen, disparaging them as inferior and suggesting we should have sought advice before purchasing. Her tone was dismissive and condescending, which caught me off guard. Up until then, I had maintained my composure, giving her the benefit of the doubt due to her blunt manner. However, her continued negativity was too much, and I finally snapped, asking her pointedly, "What the hell are you talking about?" Her critical words were especially hurtful given the effort my partner William and I had put into creating a perfect space for our baby. It was evident she was not there to provide helpful feedback, but rather to dampen the joy of the evening. As Layla was about to reply, both my mother and mother-in-law entered the nursery, immediately brightening at the sight of the room and showering it with compliments. Their positive reactions temporarily eased the tension. However, I was not ready to dismiss Layla's behavior. I confronted her again, this time more firmly, asking her to clarify her comments. Both mothers picked up on the tension, with my own mother inquiring about the issue, sensing something was amiss. I took the time to explain that Layla had been quite critical of the nursery decor and even remarked that the baby clothes we had selected were of poor quality. Both my mother-in-law and another relative were clearly taken aback by such direct criticism, especially during such a joyful occasion. In a moment of disbelief, my mother-in-law chuckled and questioned Layla directly, who, finding herself the center of sudden attention, attempted to soften her previous comments. She explained that she thought the clothes felt too coarse and was merely suggesting that we might want to consider softer options. However, both my mother and mother-in-law were not convinced by her explanation. They disagreed, noting that the clothes were actually quite soft. Layla, feeling cornered, tried to justify her stance by stating her experience as a mother should be respected and that I should be open to criticism. However, before I could reply, my mother intervened with a calm but firm tone, reminding Layla that she and my mother-in-law were also mothers and would never make such harsh comments to a new mother. My mother-in-law supported this, sternly telling Layla that while giving advice is acceptable, her approach was not appropriate. Layla, feeling outnumbered and embarrassed, quickly left the nursery. I followed her, hoping to defuse any further tension. She walked straight to Mark, who was in the living room with other family members, and abruptly stated she wanted to leave. Mark, puzzled but recognizing her distress, apologized to everyone, congratulated us once more on our pregnancy, and they left. Later, Mark called to apologize for Layla's behavior during our announcement celebration. He explained that after a tough lecture from my mother-in-law, he learned more about the situation. Understanding the complexity, I forgave him easily. Mark shared that Layla had a painful history with pregnancy, having been a young mother at 19 and later facing challenges in trying to expand her family, which had put a strain on her mental health and contributed to the end of her marriage. Knowing this, I felt a wave of empathy for Layla, understanding how difficult it must be to see others experiencing what she had struggled with. Understanding her difficult past, I recognized that her experiences had left deep emotional wounds. Yet, despite my empathy, I couldn't overlook the hurtful remarks she made during our celebration, which prompted me to decide on keeping a respectful distance at future family events to safeguard the cheerful environment for our expanding family. Mark and Layla's relationship progressed, and when I was giving birth, Mark asked if Layla could come to see the newborn. Although hesitant, William and I agreed, hoping for a better outcome. Unfortunately, Layla's comment about our baby's sparse hair being a sign of future thin hair was another sharp and unnecessary criticism during a moment that should have been filled with happiness. This remark visibly upset William, and soon after their brief congratulations, Mark and Layla left as the atmosphere had turned tense. This year took a surprising turn when Mark announced he was marrying Layla. The news received mixed reactions, especially from my mother-in-law, who was visibly disappointed and had never wanted Layla to join the family. This friction had been building for some time, as my usually warm-hearted mother-in-law had been repeatedly clashing with Layla. William spoke with Mark, concerned about the haste of the wedding, only to learn from Mark that Layla was 4 months pregnant, a fact discovered 3 months prior and kept secret to avoid judgment before their marriage. Mark expressed his wish to wed Layla before their child's birth, a decision driven by their circumstances. However, wedding preparations hit a snag when Layla, having gained weight during pregnancy, could not fit into her chosen wedding gown. Despite Mark's efforts to find a comfortable alternative, Layla insisted on her original choice, leading to a demand to postpone the wedding. Originally scheduled before the baby's arrival, it was now delayed until after, adding another layer of complexity to an already strained situation. To accommodate Layla's preference for postponing the wedding, everyone understood and respected her choice, especially since it was her and Mark's big day. They deserved to have it on a date that made them feel at ease. About a month earlier, Layla had given birth to a beautiful daughter, and my husband William and I had visited them in the hospital to celebrate this joyful occasion. With their wedding approaching, William was set to be Mark's best man. Given that we weren't comfortable leaving our little Riley alone for the whole day, we decided it would be best to bring her along. After discussing it with my mother-in-law, we agreed that managing Riley's care between us would be feasible. Initially, I considered hiring a babysitter for the hotel room, but due to increasing worries about child safety, having a trusted family member watch over Riley seemed the safer option. During the reception, I planned to abstain from alcohol and retire early to ensure Riley was well looked after. However, about a week before the wedding, Layla called. During our conversation, she unexpectedly expressed her wish for Riley not to attend the wedding. Taken aback, I inquired about her reasons. Layla explained that she wanted her newborn to be the sole focus of the day and feared Riley might divert attention. I reassured her that Riley had already met everyone and wouldn't overshadow her daughter's presence at her own wedding. Despite my efforts to reason with her, Layla became quite upset and stated that if I couldn't respect her wishes, I should consider not attending. The disagreement escalated, drawing in Mark, William, and my mother-in-law. Mark later reached out to apologize for Layla's stance and reassured me that Riley and I were still welcome at the wedding. He encouraged me not to take Layla's reaction to heart. Although upset by the confrontation, I recognized the importance of supporting William and being there for his brother's wedding. I decided to set aside my frustrations and attend, aiming to foster family harmony and make the most of the celebration. This decision led us to the events that unfolded during Mark and Layla's ceremony. During the wedding, many of our relatives were charmed by my daughter Riley, noting her cuteness with admiration. However, Layla, the bride, often looked at me with disapproval, clearly upset that I had brought Riley to her special day. Despite this, Riley became the unintentional center of attention, and I made sure not to overshadow the bride. As planned, during the reception, my mother-in-law, William, and I took turns caring for Riley in our hotel room. As the evening wore on, my mother-in-law, slightly tipsy, was the designated caregiver while William and I avoided alcohol to remain alert. At one point, I saw my mother-in-law frantically searching for me in the hotel, her anxious expression alarming me. I hurried to her, with William following, concerned. She trembled as she informed us that Riley was missing. William was confused. He had just left Riley safely with her. It turned out Layla had visited the room, and after a brief conversation with my mother-in-law, who had stepped away to the restroom, both Layla and Riley were gone. Panic set in, and William and I quickly approached Mark, Layla's husband, to understand her actions. Although surprised, Mark urged us not to call the police, insisting Layla meant no harm. But overwhelmed with fear, I felt we had no choice but to alert the authorities and the hotel staff, who began an immediate search. Despite their efforts, there was no sign of Riley or Layla for over an hour. As tension replaced the festive atmosphere, the police arrived and took our statements. Amidst growing concern among the guests, a hotel staff member finally came with news that Riley and Layla were found at the back of the hotel. My heart raced as we followed him. There, we found Layla, sitting with Riley in her arms and smoking, her own baby beside her in a carrier. Tears filled my eyes as I took Riley back, while William confronted Layla about her reckless behavior. When Layla took Riley without telling anyone, her justification was simply wanting to assist my mother-in-law, asserting that Riley was practically family now. However, upon learning this, my mother-in-law, now sober and alarmed, furiously confronted Layla for taking our daughter without permission, especially since Layla had vanished when ML was preoccupied. Layla responded with a smirk, suggesting that if I had been genuinely concerned, I wouldn't have brought Riley to the wedding in the first place. Shocked, I realized Layla had intentionally taken my daughter to instill fear and teach me a lesson, making me think twice before opposing her demands in the future. Amidst our heated exchange, Mark attempted to defuse the tension, proposing it might be a misunderstanding. But when the police asked if I wanted to press charges, seeing Layla's unapologetic demeanor convinced me to proceed with kidnapping charges to ensure she wouldn't dare cross me or my family again. Despite Layla's shock and protests, she was arrested at the wedding. Mark pleaded for me to reconsider, but my mother-in-law supported my decision, deeming Layla's actions inexcusable. Afterward, I couldn't sleep, troubled by the ordeal and my daughter's safety. Mark kept urging us to drop the charges, claiming it wasn't Layla's true intention to harm. Over the weeks, I remained firm despite Mark's persistent appeals. The hotel's CCTV footage and MIL's statement supported the case against Layla, who now faced a court hearing. During a recent confrontation, William and I challenged Mark about his lack of understanding, ultimately choosing to distance ourselves from his denial of Layla's toxic behavior. At the hearing, Layla admitted guilt. Her lawyer argued that her actions were a one-time, emotional mistake due to wedding day pressures. She was sentenced to community service and counseling for her first offense. Layla later apologized to me and William, but we couldn't forgive her, the trust irreparably broken. Both MIL and Andrew have also cut ties with Mark, refusing any reconciliation. Recently, I encountered a peculiar situation that I doubt many can relate to. It's about my mother-in-law and sister-in-law who embody the epitome of high society drama, often resembling characters from a daytime soap opera. They spend their afternoons indulging in salon visits and their evenings gossiping in upscale bars, living a life of leisure funded by my father-in-law, FIL. Rumors swirl that he may even have a mistress, an arrangement seemingly tolerated by my MIL as long as her lavish lifestyle is maintained. I'm 34 years old, happily married for 10 years to my 40-year-old husband, and we're blessed with 3 wonderful children, a 9-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter. Despite our content family life, my MIL and SIL's over-the-top behavior and sense of entitlement often challenge our peace. My SIL, at 27, still single, has developed an overwhelming sense of entitlement, making it impossible for her to accept a no for an answer. The crux of the issue occurred last week when my MIL invited me to a lunch on a Wednesday afternoon. Given her rare initiative to connect, I proposed an alternate evening dinner, but she declined due to her busy social calendar. We agreed to meet on Saturday. I arrived in casual attire, while she appeared overdressed in a shimmering black gown. During this bizarre lunch, my SIL, emboldened by her mother, demanded an outrageous birthday gift for her upcoming 40th birthday. She wanted my youngest child. At first, I thought it was a joke. However, realizing their seriousness, I played along only to expose their absurd request later on social media. I publicly shared the incident, highlighting their foolishness and immaturity to our family and friends. This situation might sound surreal, and I'm still bewildered by the audacity of their request. It's a glimpse into the daily dramas influenced by their delusional world, where reality is often stranger than fiction. My husband and I continue to navigate this delicate family dynamic, striving to protect our children and maintain our sanity amidst the chaos. It was a peculiar choice for a midday meal when she decided to join me and immediately began critiquing my choice of perfume. After the initial pleasantries, she dove right into discussing plans for my sister-in-law's upcoming 40th birthday. Odd, considering her 25th was just a few months back. I pointed out that her next birthday was nearly a year away, but she laughed it off, emphasizing the need for early planning to avoid last year's mishaps when her gifts apparently disappointed her. Rolling my eyes, I couldn't help but remember how we supposedly ruined her last birthday by gifting her a perfectly nice $190 dress rather than some extravagant outfit from Zara paired with a sapphire necklace. She then suggested, rather outrageously, that to make up for the so-called substandard gift, we should give a truly unique present next year, a baby. Yes, she seriously proposed that I have a child and give it to my sister-in-law as a birthday gift. I was utterly shocked and had to ask repeatedly to ensure I wasn't mishearing. Her confirmation only intensified my disbelief. Why would I agree to something like that? I challenged her, incredulous. She argued that it was to compensate for last year's gift debacle. That was the last straw for me. I declared firmly that I didn't owe anyone such an absurd obligation, certainly not to breed a child as a birthday offering. I left the restaurant in dismay. On my way home, after picking up my son from a friend's house, my husband greeted me with a question about the lunch ordeal. He was already clued in by his mother's call, though he didn't take her upset seriously, knowing her dramatic tendencies. I explained the bizarre gift suggestion, and he initially laughed, thinking it was a joke. But as I recounted the full story, his amusement turned to shock, and he could only wonder what had gotten into her to suggest such an idea. I made it clear to him that I couldn't agree to her demands. My husband calmed me down and affirmed that we were not planning to have more children and certainly wouldn't be handing one over to Ella. The following Sunday, as we relaxed at home, my mother-in-law arrived unexpectedly. Exhausted, I excused myself to rest, but she stopped me to apologize for her previous behavior, explaining she hadn't provided enough context about her request. She admitted feeling desperate because Ella, who is nearing 40 and still single, was feeling increasingly frustrated with life. She suggested that having a baby might give Ella a new focus, but I was appalled by the notion. A child isn't a simple distraction or a means to bring temporary happiness like a toy. It's a lifelong responsibility. I couldn't understand why Ella couldn't find a more appropriate outlet or ambition, like a job. However, she doesn't work, doesn't contribute to household chores to avoid damaging her manicure, and still lives with her parents, spending money without any awareness of its source. Her room remains a childhood shrine to pink, a color she wears exclusively. She seems oblivious to the world, unaware of basic facts like the capital city or the current president, simply enjoying the effortless luxury provided by her parents. When I suggested that Ella could adopt if she so desired a child, Mayoral scoffed, calling adoption a risk due to unknown genetic histories, and urged us to reconsider as a safer option. This was neither reasonable nor acceptable, and I stood firm against it, frustrated by her audacity and disregard for what a child truly needs. I gave my husband a pleading look, hinting for him to speak up as the conversation at dinner took a bizarre turn. He chuckled and remarked that my sister-in-law Mill was being utterly absurd, suggesting I should bear another child despite my already full plate with motherhood and a career. He pointed out how strange it would sound to people that her brother would be the father of my child. Without hesitating, Mill retorted, "Why not? Sophia's cousin Dill was a surrogate for her daughter, so what's the big deal if you do the same for Ella?" I paused, trying to process her words. Hold on, that was a medical necessity. Sophia's cousin helped because Sophia physically couldn't have children. Ella doesn't have that issue. If she did, perhaps we'd consider helping, but it's not the same situation. We're not some baby factory. My husband suggested Ella should instead focus on finding a partner and starting her own family, rather than complicating things further. Mill burst into tears, lamenting how hard Ella tried to find a suitable partner, but lamented the dismal quality of men nowadays. She turned to me and sighed, "You're so lucky to have my son. Not everyone is as fortunate as you. Ella has high standards. She needs someone who will treat her the way we do." "Yeah, her last relationship ended over a designer bag," I added, a hint of frustration in my voice. Mill tried to defend her, but I couldn't take it anymore. This conversation is making me sick. I need to lie down. And for the record, we are not having a child to hand out as a birthday gift. Later, my husband joined me in our bedroom to comfort me. I asked him what he had told his mother. He reassured me that he had made our stance clear, no more children, and urged them to respect our decision. He mentioned that Mill had stormed out in a fury. "Can you believe this mess?" I asked, exasperated. "Sometimes, I just want to bang my head against the wall." Just when I thought I was only dealing with Evelyn, Ella joined the fray. Talking to her is even more challenging because she simply can't grasp basic logic. As I mentioned before, Evelyn completely ruined my Sunday last week with her incessant talk about having a baby. And just like clockwork, this Sunday she was at it again, this time bringing her cousin Ella along. Ella showed up dressed differently than usual, opting for a skirt and a comfortable blouse instead of her typical tight-fitting attire, though she didn't skimp on her perfectly styled hair and nails. Evelyn pointed out that Ella was starting to dress like a mom, which they seemed to think would magically prepare her for motherhood. With a smirk, Ella embraced her brother as if they hadn't seen each other in years, despite the short time apart. She then loudly hinted at wanting a baby as a surprise gift for her 40th birthday. My husband, caught off guard, had to set the record straight and debunk that idea right there, and then, thankfully, he intervened before I lost my patience. He firmly told her that we were not planning on having children anytime soon, let alone as a birthday present. He was discreetly planning a surprise, which unfortunately led to a misunderstanding. When Ella realized that she wasn't receiving the baby-related gift she had anticipated, her disappointment boiled over. "Why not? You've always been harsh to me, and now you're missing your chance to make things right," she exclaimed, demanding a baby doll as if it were that simple. "Ella, we don't operate a baby store where you place an order and get exactly what you want," I replied, trying to inject some reason into the conversation. "Do you even understand how babies come into this world?" Her anger softened as she shared her longing for a daughter. "I have so much love to give. I dream of raising a confident, successful woman and know she would be lucky to have me as her mother. Ella's declaration was heartfelt, but it underscored her misunderstanding. You see, this is why it's difficult to discuss this with her, I thought. She seemed unaware that I couldn't choose the sex of my child, as if selecting a shade of lipstick. Moreover, Ella had never cared for a child. She used to dismiss my own children to avoid messing her clothes or hair. How could she possibly manage the demands of motherhood, like midnight feedings or diaper changes? And I couldn't bear the thought of enduring the challenges of pregnancy and childbirth only to hand over my child to someone so unprepared for the realities of parenting. As Ella continued to make her case for motherhood, I was lost in these thoughts. Finally, I stood up. Look, Ella, I know this will upset you. You seem to find reasons to be upset with me anyway. But hear me clearly. I am not going to have a baby for you. Do you understand? I penned down a note for them because it seemed like they, including my mother, were not only hard of hearing but also had seemingly lost their common sense. My husband gestured to me, suggesting I should tread lightly, but their absurdity had already pushed me to my limit. I firmly told them I wanted no more discussions on the matter and warned that if they continued to bother me, I'd have no choice but to ban them from our home. Overwhelmed, I retreated to my room and forcefully shut the door behind me. Perhaps I crossed a line, but given their behavior, I was at a loss for words to describe just how toxic they were. My husband subtly tried to point out that I might have been too direct, but I was too infuriated to care, and he didn't pursue the matter further. He only mentioned that his mother and sister had unfairly labeled him as overly soft, and he left it at that. Regardless of what they think, he really needs to learn that he can't always be the nice guy. As Sunday approached, I braced myself for yet another confrontation, but surprisingly it was quiet and I preferred it that way. I was hopeful that this would mark the end of the ongoing disturbances. However, that peace was short-lived. The following 4 weeks were deceptively calm, and I enjoyed the tranquility of not having M turn up at our doorstep. But little did I know, the chaos had shifted online. I discovered that Ella had been maligning me on social media, accusing me of sabotaging her chances of motherhood. Known as a salon manager, she regularly posts makeup tutorials to a sizable following. I don't spend much time on social media as my life is filled with real-world responsibilities, including 3 children and a demanding job. Ella had spun a tale that her brother was on board with her plan to start a family, but I was the one obstructing it. She portrayed herself as a victim, eager to be a mother but unlucky in love, and therefore unable to adopt. A blatant falsehood, as they hadn't even pursued adoption. If they had, I doubted Ella would pass the rigorous screening process. She went on to depict me as someone who withheld my approval because she was single, accusing me of holding outdated and conservative views. I was tempted to respond. I became aware of Ella's disparaging online campaign against me only after my husband's aunt contacted me, questioning my actions. This prompted me to delve into what had been said. To my surprise, Ella's friends and relatives had unfairly painted me as the antagonist in her narrative. Regardless of the accusations, I maintained my stance. It's my body, and I have the right to decide. My husband advised me to disregard the situation, suggesting it would eventually fade away. At first, I tried to ignore the posts, but it's challenging to overlook public accusations aimed at you. Eventually, I realized that Ella was using my silence to further vilify me. Together with my friends, I strategized a response to give Ella a dose of her own medicine. I contacted her, expressing my concerns about the negative impact her campaign was having on my reputation and hinting at the possibility of acquiescing to her wishes. To appease her and perhaps to settle the issue, I suggested that she visit my home to discuss the matter further. Overjoyed at the thought of her perceived victory, Ella eagerly accepted. During her visit, I proposed we go live on social media to announce her upcoming motherhood, knowing her penchant for attention. This would also give me a chance to clear my name and gain some positive exposure. As we went live, I publicly agreed to Ella's request, turning the spotlight on her. I prompted her to share her plans for the future child, to which she enthusiastically detailed her expectations of having a daughter, already planning to dress her up and never let her be seen without makeup. However, I had never confirmed the baby's gender, nor had I fully committed to the decision. The live audience quickly caught on to the nuances of the situation, questioning Ella's presumptions and readiness. This situation highlighted the complexities of dealing with public perception and personal disputes in the age of social media. In a recent video that went viral, many viewers bombarded it with negative comments and trolling. However, Ella was so engrossed in sharing her thoughts that she seemed oblivious to the online backlash. During our conversation, I mentioned how adorable her enthusiasm was, but couldn't help asking about handling the tougher moments, like when a baby gets fussy. Ella confidently replied, "Girls in our family hardly cry. Have you ever seen your daughter cry? She's always so pristine and serene." Trying to explain gently, I told her that she only sees my daughter during her calm moments. Behind every well-dressed, tranquil baby is a mother tirelessly managing tears and tantrums. Ella, undeterred, declared she'd handle the dressing up in frilly dresses and tiaras and leave the crying to me. Her plan was to take the baby when calm and return her at the first sign of distress. I couldn't help but laugh and questioned if she truly expected to only manage the peaceful moments. She exclaimed, "Exactly. Why not?" I laughed, a bit more sharply this time, as Ella insisted that she could handle it and even do better than me, boasting about her numerous followers and superior fashion sense. As she vented, she abruptly ended the live broadcast, clearly annoyed at being questioned on air. Unaware of the impression she had left, Ella claimed she was ready to dive into motherhood. Meanwhile, I remained expressionless. A friend had recorded everything, and later, I wrote a detailed post outlining the concerns about Ella's readiness for parenting, highlighted by her own words during our talk. I shared the post online, tagging her, after ensuring it would be seen by many, including Ella herself, once she woke up the next day. The post aimed to showcase the red flags in Ella's approach to childcare, revealing aspects of her character not evident in her public responses. She removed her tag, but by then, the post had already gained traction, drawing attention from thousands. Once it went viral, largely thanks to Ella's followers sharing it, she faced an onslaught of criticism. People mocked her intelligence, with one comment particularly harsh, suggesting she was unfit to be a mother or even to be out alone. Amidst this online turmoil, my mother-in-law called me. Before she could speak, I informed her that our conversation was being recorded and that I wouldn't hesitate to make it public if needed. Stunned, she immediately hung up and didn't call again. Neither did her daughter, especially after I warned that I'd record any disruptive behavior they might show at my home. Putting them in their place felt sadly satisfying. My husband and I still chuckle over the troll comments we read online. I'm Ruby, a 26-year-old who's recently started exploring online communities, seeking some understanding and support. This isn't an easy story for me to share, particularly because it involves my older sister, Sadie, who's 27. She's made my life quite difficult, and I'm reaching my breaking point. 5 days ago, we attended a homecoming party for a mutual friend, a typical gathering where everyone from high school reunites and exchanges pleasantries. I had been reluctant to go, mainly due to my sister's presence. My parents, worried about me becoming too isolated, insisted I attend. They thought it would be good for me to socialize away from Sadie's overshadowing presence. You might think I'm just a younger sister filled with jealousy, but the situation with Sadie is more severe. While I've managed decent grades and kept to myself, Sadie has always been the star, achieving high marks and adored by everyone. To outsiders, she's a polite, perfect individual. But those close to her, like me, see a different side. She has always treated me poorly, yet I'm the only one who seems to see this side of her. Growing up with Sadie was like dealing with someone who thought they were liquid gold, while I was barely acknowledged. My parents placed her on a pedestal I could never reach. Behind closed doors, she was a different person, someone who treated me like dirt while maintaining a perfect facade to others. At the party, I decided I couldn't keep silent anymore. My sister, who seemed perfect to everyone else, was secretly dating 3 men, neither of whom knew about the other. Amidst our parents' anniversary celebration, I exposed her actions. I revealed her deceit not out of spite, but out of a desperate need for authenticity and to show that I too could no longer uphold the illusion of her perfection. This revelation was hard for me, as I've always been seen as the lesser sibling, often disregarded and made to feel worthless. Sadie not only outshined me, but made sure I felt dim in comparison. Her confidence was evident, but it masked a deeper cruelty. She didn't just strive to succeed, she thrived on making others feel inferior. Discussing her dating life isn't about jealousy. It's about highlighting how she's managed to maintain such a pristine image while treating people as disposable. Sadie is often lauded for her looks and charm, and while she's had numerous suitors, she treats them with disdain, as though she's doing them a favor by merely considering them. Rewriting this passage with simpler, clear language and making it longer involves unpacking the emotions and experiences described and presenting them in a more detailed, narrative style. Here's a revised version. There's this person who makes everyone around feel inferior, and her name is Sadie. It's like she's the main character out of a high school drama where the mean girl reigns supreme. But here's the twist. Instead of people standing up to her, they actually applaud her for her so-called honesty. She has this knack for tearing someone's style apart right to their face, all the while making it sound like she's doing them a favor. She also acts like she's some expert on relationships. Just the other day, she had the nerve to tell our cousin that her boyfriend was brave for dating someone with her body type. Who even says something like that? Yet everyone just laughs it off because, well, it's Sadie. Everyone thinks Sadie can do no wrong. Sometimes I dream about yelling at her to just stop talking, but I know that wouldn't end well for me. But that's not even the worst part. Our parents are in on this too. Not that they dislike me. That might actually be easier to handle. No, they constantly push me to be more like her. Why can't you be more like Sadie, they say. Look how she handles these situations. You could learn a lot from your sister. It's as if they got their perfect child with Sadie and then ended up with a second choice in me. They make me follow her around everywhere like I'm a project that needs fixing. They believe that if I just spend enough time around her, some of her perfection will magically rub off on me. Being continuously compared to Sadie feels like being slowly chipped away at. Every single thing I do is measured against her. It's not just the big stuff. They critique every little detail of my life through the Sadie lens. My choice in clothes? Sadie would never wear that. My B+ in math. Sadie got an A without even trying. My interest in art? Why can't you do something practical like Sadie? It's relentless. And it doesn't stop with our parents. Relatives, family, friends, neighbors. Everyone feels entitled to weigh in. It's always, why can't you be more like your sister? As if I'm some sort of mistake they're all trying to correct. Even my teachers have gotten in on the act. I remember my high school math teacher telling the entire class she expected better from Sadie's sister. To them, I wasn't Ruby. I was just the disappointing follow-up to their star pupil. All this comparison has done a number on me. My self-esteem is in tatters. My social life is pretty much non-existent. I've gradually withdrawn from friends because I can't stand the constant reminders that I just don't measure up. And dating? That's a disaster area. I'm 26, never had a boyfriend, never even been kissed. And it's not because I'm too picky or playing hard to get. After years of being told I'm not good enough, I've lost any desire to try. How can you connect with someone when you see yourself as just a lesser version of someone else? Every time a guy shows a bit of interest, all I can think is that they'd probably prefer Sadie if they met her. I know it sounds pathetic, but that's the reality of growing up in the shadow of a sister who's treated like she can do no wrong. So here I am at another family gathering, watching everyone enjoy themselves while Sadie, as usual, is at the center of attention, surrounded by people who can't get enough of her. As the gathering progressed, I found myself gradually merging into the background, eventually becoming as inconspicuous as the wallpaper in a secluded corner of the room. Later, we all formed a large circle to welcome a friend who had returned, and that's when the full impact of my isolation struck me. Observing the circle felt like watching a scene from a teen romance comedy. Most were paired off, some in committed relationships, others casually chatting, defining modern-day dating in their own terms. Then there was me, the only one who struggled to even initiate a chat without feeling like an intruder. Amidst it all were Sadie and her boyfriend, John, who looked as though they had walked straight off a fashion magazine cover. John was tall, intelligent, and universally liked, the epitome of the ideal guy, and together, they were the quintessential couple that you want to dislike simply because they are so perfect. Sadie reveled in the attention and the envy that their relationship sparked, using it as yet another way to assert her superiority, especially over me, reminding me and everyone else of how she was excelling in life while I felt stuck at the starting line. The dreaded moment came when one of Sadie's friends turned to me with a patronizing look, poised to ask a question they knew would be uncomfortable. "So, Ruby, are you seeing anyone or maybe interested in someone?" Before I could muster a response, Sadie erupted into laughter, a harsh, mocking sound that made everyone pause and stare, the kind designed to inflict pain. "My sister," she gasped between fits of laughter. "You might as well ask if a rock is dating someone. The closest relationship she has is with her bedroom ceiling, crying herself to sleep each night." Her words stung, but what hurt more was how the others joined in, treating my loneliness as the evening's best entertainment. But Sadie was far from finished. "Let's be honest here," she continued, basking in the attention of her captive audience. "Look at her. What guy would ever want to date someone who looks like that?" She pointed at me dismissively, as if I were a failed experiment. Any man who ended up with her would basically be admitting defeat. The laughter grew, with some trying to conceal it behind their hands and others blatantly pointing. Sadie, relishing her role as the cruel monarch, kept up her tirade. "Look, she's crying again," she announced, as my tears began to fall. "Maybe instead of crying about being single, you should try improving yourself. Hit the gym, learn to dress better, maybe even develop a personality," she advised, counting off each suggestion on her fingers as if offering genuine advice rather than publicly humiliating me. Just when it seemed it couldn't get any worse, Sadie pulled John into a dramatic kiss right in front of everyone, a display straight out of a romantic film where I was cast as the tragic, overlooked character. "See this? This is what a real relationship looks like. This is what you could have if you weren't such a mess. You should be taking notes, little sister," she taunted after breaking the kiss. I sat there, tears streaming down my face, speechless and shattered. The hardest part was that after years of such remarks, not just from her but from our parents too, I started to believe them. It's difficult to put into words the profound sense of isolation I've felt lately, compounded by everyone's constant comparisons to my sister, Sadie. People have always told me that I need to emulate her, work harder, change everything about myself. So, I found myself just sitting quietly, resigning myself to their view of me as nothing more than a second-rate version of someone they deemed perfect. The laughter and judgment from those around me only deepened my loneliness. That night, after yet another humiliating episode where Sadie showcased her superiority in front of our friends, mocking me as unworthy of love, I sought solace from our parents. I hoped, naively, that this time they might see my pain. But when I shared my hurt, they barely looked up from their phones. My mother dismissed my feelings as trivial, insisting Sadie was only guiding me. My father agreed, saying she was helping me better myself. It was a crushing realization. My own parents sided with her, viewing me as undeserving of love and worthy of public embarrassment. I spent that night alone in my room, crying until my pillow was soaked, replaying the day's events, the laughter, Sadie's taunting, our parents' indifference. In my despair, I questioned my worth as a person. Driven by desperation, I turned to dating apps like Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge, crafting profiles in a bid to find validation, to prove I wasn't worthless. But every interaction fell through, reinforcing the harsh words Sadie had thrown at me. Despite following her advice, signing up for a gym, watching makeup tutorials, buying clothes I couldn't afford, I was never able to meet her impossible standards. She seemed to relish my struggles, once sneeringly telling me that my efforts were futile, that I'd always be the unremarkable one, the ugly duckling. Feeling utterly defeated, I sought comfort in this community. Every attempt I've made at standing up for myself or improving has been met with ridicule or indifference. My sister despises me. My parents offer no support. I'm left doubting my own worth, haunted by the thought that maybe I am just a shadow of Sadie. I need to address something important that has been brought up in the comments, where some people have labeled me an attention seeker. It's disheartening to hear, especially considering the 26 years of emotional abuse I've endured in silence. If I were seeking attention, I wouldn't have spent my entire life putting up with Sadie's dominance and humiliation without a word of protest. There were numerous times I felt like confronting her, but I chose to remain calm and collected. Sadie has been receiving lavish flower arrangements and expensive gifts, which she paraded around the house, claiming they were from John. My parents, of course, were thrilled. They see John as the ideal match for their darling daughter. However, John's visits have become increasingly rare, though no one seemed to notice or care much. Sadie always had an excuse ready, saying he was either busy at work or visiting family. I didn't think much of it either until yesterday. As I walked past Sadie's room, I caught a glimpse through her slightly open door and was stunned. There was Sadie, cozying up with a man who was definitely not John. She was laughing in that insincere way she does when she's trying to charm someone. When she saw me, her expression turned to one of sheer panic. Confronting her, she hastily explained that she and John had ended things quite some time ago, a fact that was news to everyone, and introduced the man as Julian, her new boyfriend. She claimed she was just trying to mend her broken heart, but her behavior suggested otherwise. Sadie seemed more than fine, almost radiant, as she prepared for Julian's visits and flaunted his gifts. Turns out, they were all from him, and he seems quite wealthy. At first, I felt sorry for John, thinking how tough it must be to be discarded by Sadie. But the secrecy surrounding her new relationship with Julian felt strange. Why had no one heard about her breakup? Why keep Julian a secret? That's when Sadie tried to manipulate me into silence. She sweet-talked me into not mentioning Julian, saying she needed time to see if he was the one, as if she were living out some romance movie plot. But it wasn't really a request. Her reminders to keep quiet about Julian were anything but friendly. This whole scenario is far from a simple case of heartbreak. It's a calculated act of deception, and I'm caught in the middle of it. Sadie always seemed to wield threats like weapons, often hinting at dire consequences with phrases like, "Remember what happened last time you crossed me?" Or, "It would be a shame if Mom and Dad found out about." She had mastered the art of manipulation, always using something incriminating against me, playing her role perfectly. Over the years, she painted me as the envious younger sister, and I felt powerless. If I dared reveal her secrets, she'd twist the narrative to make me the antagonist, so I remained silent. Then an unusual incident occurred that made things even more bizarre. I was in Sadie's room, just borrowing a charger. She always made a big deal whenever I needed something. Her phone was on the bed, unattended, as she was likely in the bathroom doing her routine makeup check. Suddenly, her phone lit up with a barrage of notifications, all from John, her so-called ex-boyfriend. Curiosity got the better of me. After enduring years of her snooping through my things, I felt justified in glancing at her phone, though it was locked and I couldn't read the messages. Why would her ex be bombarding her with messages if they truly had broken up? Wouldn't he have moved on? Something didn't add up. Perhaps he was trying to reconcile, or maybe they were still friends. However, knowing Sadie, staying friends with an ex wasn't her style. She typically spent months disparaging her ex's post-breakup, yet she hadn't uttered a negative word about John recently. She hardly mentioned him, which was odd given how she used to flaunt their relationship. I couldn't prove anything, but I sensed there was more to their story. I needed to vent, especially after seeing the dynamic shift in Sadie's behavior. Let me illustrate just how Sadie usually deals with breakups. There was a time she spent 5 months telling anyone who would listen that her high school boyfriend was emotionally insensitive for forgetting her half-birthday. Another instance saw her exaggerating a request for space into an elaborate saga where she was the scorned heroine. Once, a boyfriend broke up with her because he was relocating for work, and she twisted the narrative to claim he left because he couldn't handle a strong woman. Sadie never just ends a relationship. She transforms it into a public spectacle, casting herself as the perennial victim. She's known for posting vague quotes about betrayal or orchestrating run-ins with exes' friends to ensure her side of the story is heard first. She shows up at family gatherings with tear-stained eyes, barely touching her food until someone inquires, leading her to unleash every grievance. Our mother often takes days off work to console her after breakups. But with John, it's been total silence, no tearful calls, no vague social media posts, no dramatic outbursts at dinner about men not handling successful women. Sadie, the girl who once held a 2-day pity party over a guy not texting back promptly, is now suspiciously quiet about the breakup with a man she showcased for months. And now with Julian, Sadie's tactics have shifted. She's uncharacteristically discreet, sneaking around, issuing threats to maintain silence. This is the same person who has never hidden a relationship. She's always made it clear that she sought after. This sudden change is not only uncharacteristic, but highly suspicious. During our grandmother's birthday celebration, it came to light that she had casually met up with a local weatherman for a simple coffee. To many, this might seem trivial, a mere coffee outing, but I can't help feeling there's more to it. People might think I'm overanalyzing the situation, fixating on non-issues. Perhaps there's some truth to that. Perhaps I am overthinking. However, my entire life I've observed Sadie, my cousin, skillfully navigate social dynamics to her advantage. I know her tactics well, and this casual mention at the party felt out of character for her. It wasn't her usual maneuver. It's left me uneasy, like there's a hidden agenda I'm yet to uncover. What do you all think? Am I reading too much into a simple coffee date, or do you also sense something amiss? But here's the real shocker. Last week, while at a downtown market, I passed a quaint cafe and saw Sadie with John, the same John she allegedly broke up with long ago. They weren't just sharing coffee. They were intimately holding hands, clearly still a couple. It was as if they'd never parted. This sight stopped me in my tracks. It confirmed all my previous suspicions. They seemed too comfortable, their interaction too natural for exes. The plot thickens. Later that night, I saw Julian sneaking into Sadie's room. Yes, the same Julian she claimed was helping her move on from John. Stunned, I watched, trying to piece together the scene. This wasn't a messy patch-up. It seemed Sadie was juggling 3 men without either knowing. I couldn't just stand by any longer, so I've taken to monitoring Sadie's movements more closely over the past few days. I've even set up a shared location app under the guise of safety. I'm determined to uncover the full story behind Sadie's tangled romantic web. The revelations about my sister Sadie left me completely unsettled. Every day, she was out with John, coffee dates, lunches, shopping sprees, their companionship as vibrant as ever with no hints of a breakup. Yet, as evening fell, Julian would arrive, stealthily entering her room under the cover of our parents' slumber. Sadie was living a dual existence, and her adeptness at it was almost commendable. In the midst of this unfolding drama, another strange event caught my attention. Elena, Sadie's lifelong best friend, had abruptly disappeared from the scene. Elena and Sadie had been inseparable, sharing endless inside jokes and constant social media interactions. Their friendship was the epitome of closeness. They even had their weekly rituals like wine nights. But suddenly, it was as if Elena had vanished from Sadie's life. No more shared posts, no more brunches, and they had even unfollowed each other on all social platforms, an act akin to declaring a feud in Sadie's circle. Unlike Sadie's other friends who often overlooked me, Elena always treated me with kindness and respect. Concerned by their unusual silence, I decided to confront Elena directly. Showing up at her door was a bold move, but her immediate reaction confirmed my suspicions. The absence of a simple greeting and her wary, "Did Sadie send you?" spoke volumes. When I assured her Sadie hadn't sent me, her relief was palpable, signaling a deep rift between them. Elena, usually reserved, erupted into a bitter laugh upon mentioning Sadie, calling her pure evil and deserving of any misfortune heading her way. She divulged that Sadie had never broken up with John. She was simultaneously dating Julian, a secret she managed to keep under wraps. Elena had been aware of this, but remained silent to preserve their friendship. The situation escalated when Sadie bragged about her exploits to Elena over coffee, unashamedly flaunting how she managed 3 relationships. When Elena expressed her disapproval, Sadie lashed out, labeling her a jealous traitor and dismissing 20 years of friendship over Elena's refusal to endorse her deceit. This episode painted a starkly different picture of my sister, who had always criticized me for my lack of romantic relationships, yet here she was, entangled in deception. The irony of her previous taunts about my worthiness of love was not lost on me. Sadie, who lectured about being a role model, was far from the exemplary figure she claimed to be. Now, armed with this explosive information, I find myself at a crossroads. What should I do with what I know? Is it time for Sadie to confront the consequences of her duplicity? After enduring years as the unassuming sister, always choosing the moral high ground while Sadie trampled over me, I reached my breaking point. Sadie, the epitome of perfection, who often ridiculed me for my single status, was actually managing 3 boyfriends at once, turning her life into a chaotic romantic comedy plot. Meanwhile, she had the audacity to lecture me about relationships while orchestrating the grandest deceit I had ever witnessed. For the first time, I held the reins to expose her. The stage was set, our parents' 47th wedding anniversary. A lavish party was in the works with a grand venue and catered cuisine. Sadie, true to form, controlled the guest list, inviting only John, her official boyfriend, while keeping Julian in the shadows as usual. Seizing this perfect chance, I meticulously planned my move to unveil Sadie's true character. I ensured every detail was flawless, aware that I had just one opportunity to disrupt her carefully crafted facade. Over the years, Sadie had positioned herself as the ideal daughter, sister, and girlfriend, while painting me as the disorganized mess. It was time to overturn these misconceptions. The most challenging part was ensuring 3 men attended without alerting Sadie. Direct invitations were too risky. Subtlety was essential. Thankfully, Elena played a pivotal role. She still had 3 men's contact details from previous group gatherings organized by Sadie. Together, we created invitations mimicking Sadie's style, complete with her typical heart emojis and her signature "can't wait to see you" at the end. Elena dispatched John's invite, and I took care of Julian's. Unbeknownst to them, they were not the sole objects of Sadie's affection. Positioned near the entrance, my nerves were palpable as I awaited Elena's signal that 3 men were en route. They arrived almost simultaneously, John first, impeccably dressed, followed by Julian, who scanned the room for Sadie. Seizing the moment, I approached them, the gracious hostess, and introduced them to each other, emphasizing their special roles in Sadie's life. What followed could only be described as a scene straight out of a screenplay. They exchanged pleasantries until John inquired how Julian was connected to the family. Julian's response that he was Sadie's boyfriend and their subsequent exchange of intimate photos with her shattered the facade. John's realization was palpable. His demeanor shifted from polite interest to disbelief. As 3 men stood, stunned, showcasing their photos as if in court, the drama unfolded. I glanced around for Sadie and spotted her near the dessert table, visibly shaken. My usually composed sister, who always had a retort ready, was speechless, her expression one of sheer terror. That evening marked a turning point. Not only did I reclaim my dignity, but I also exposed Sadie's duplicity, reshaping our family dynamics forever. This revelation was not just about revenge. It was about honesty and reclaiming my worth in the eyes of those who mattered most. Sadie had always been the star of the show, but on that fateful day, the mask she'd been wearing for years finally slipped. There she stood, ghostly pale and utterly still, as the facade of her perfect life crumbled before everyone's eyes. It was a sight none of us expected, the usually unflappable Sadie frozen, witnessing her world of deceit disintegrate in real time. When she regained her composure and started moving towards us, her steps were heavy, like she was walking towards her doom. Throughout her life, Sadie had wriggled out of many tight spots with a slick ease, but this was different. Guilt was etched all over her face, and just as she opened her mouth to craft another deceit, John, her boyfriend, couldn't hold back. He hurled his invitation at her, accusing her of betrayal, his voice booming across the room. The music halted. Whispers turned into silence. Every eye at our parents' anniversary celebration was now fixed on the unfolding drama. Our parents dashed over, no doubt to smooth things over at their otherwise impeccable gathering, but it was too late. The air was thick with years of Sadie's lies finally catching up to her. Faced with the truth, Sadie crumbled. Tears streamed down her face, smudging her mascara. No quiet sobs, but loud, messy crying. She tried to don the mask of a victim, a tactic she'd mastered over the years, but this time, it garnered no sympathy. Instead, the room erupted in laughter, a harsh echo of the scorn she had often shown others. John and Julian, another of her boyfriends, took the stage next, detailing every falsehood and every manipulation. They exposed her without mercy, revealing her as someone who exploited others for her gain. In a dramatic climax, 3 declared their relationship with her over, publicly and unequivocally. The aftermath was spectacular in its own right. The party became a whirlwind of whispers and stares. The golden image my parents had crafted of Sadie was shattered. 2 days later, unable to face her tarnished reputation, Sadie vanished without a word. In the wake of her departure, a new calm settled over our household. No more comparisons, no more favoritism. It was as though my parents were seeing clearly for the first time. Meanwhile, I found solace and support in friends like Elena, who stood by me when I needed it most.
And as for me,
I'm exploring a new relationship built on genuine appreciation and respect, so different from anything I've known. He's supportive and understanding, a stark contrast to the conditional approval I grew up with. So here's to moving forward, to friendships that uplift, and to relationships that honor us as individuals. Sadie's exit from our lives may be steeped in drama, but it's also opened the door to a more authentic existence for those she left behind. Remember, karma has its own timing, and it seems it's finally Sadie's turn to learn some hard truths away from the spotlight. Take care, and cherish those who appreciate the real you. At 18 years old, I'm on the brink of starting college in 4 months, yet I find myself caught in a distressing family drama concerning my college fund. This fund wasn't just any savings. It was a generous amount meticulously set aside by my late grandparents specifically for my education. Unfortunately, my parents have decided to divert this fund to help my older sister, Isla, 27, and her boyfriend, 29, purchase a house. Isla has always been the golden child in our family, receiving an abundance of support and attention from our parents, unlike me. Growing up, I noticed the disparity in how we were treated, but it became painfully apparent as I got older. I accepted this imbalance largely because there wasn't much I could do about it. Our family isn't large, and with relatives scattered across different states, I had few allies. 5 years ago, I lost my grandfather, and last year, my grandmother passed away as well. They had crafted a joint will, which disclosed that I was to receive a substantial amount meant for my education only after both had passed. The will was clear and fair. My parents inherited the estate, Isla received all the jewelry, and I was allotted the college fund. My grandparents lived well and believed in equitable distribution. However, since I'm not yet 20, the control over these funds was temporarily given to my parents. My grandparents undoubtedly trusted my parents to manage this trust responsibly, not knowing the underlying familial tensions. Externally, we might have appeared as the ideal family, but the reality was quite different, with a clear preference for Isla over me. This bias was something my grandparents didn't see, and I never felt it necessary to reveal the strained dynamics at home. When I recently inquired about the college fund, having started my college application process, I discovered that my parents had used the money to assist Isla in buying a house. This revelation came as a shock, and when I confronted my parents, they dismissed my threats of legal action humorously, questioning how I would finance such a move. Caught in this predicament, I felt powerless but determined to address the injustice. My story is about navigating these complex family dynamics, confronting betrayal, and striving to claim what is rightfully mine. I needed to secure my spot in college. Initially, my parents assured me we would discuss my college funding when the time came and encouraged me to relax for the time being. Despite this reassurance, I couldn't shake the feeling that they were withholding something important from me. After persistently asking them for the truth, they finally revealed that they had transferred all my college funds to my sister, Isla, to help her buy a house with her boyfriend. Isla is an engineer teacher, and her boyfriend is a pet store. Their combined incomes don't allow for much financial flexibility, yet they aim to purchase an upscale home in a desirable neighborhood, viewing it as a vital, long-term investment. Personally, I felt that if they couldn't comfortably afford a house at the moment, they should continue renting until they could finance a home on their own. It seemed unreasonable and unfair that they would use the money intended for my education. When my parents disclosed what they had done with the funds, I was infuriated. I demanded the immediate return of the money, recalling the exact sum that had been promised to me for my education, a significant amount that would cover all my college expenses. Overwhelmed with emotion, I ended up having a huge argument with my parents, during which I expressed my anger and frustration vehemently, but to no avail. My parents remained firm in their decision, justifying it by stating that Isla needed the support more immediately and that it was only fair for me to earn my way through college, just as others in the family had done. They refused to reconsider, even when I suggested other potential solutions, like selling other assets bequeathed to Isla and our grandparents to fund her house purchase. Their dismissive attitude and lack of regret for their decision left me devastated and feeling betrayed. I even considered legal action as a last resort, feeling that they had failed in their duty to safeguard my college funds. The entire situation felt dismissive and incredibly unfair, and it was clear that any further attempts to persuade them would be futile. When I turned 20, I was finally old enough to make my own decisions, but I felt utterly powerless. I was completely dependent on my parents, who, though not violent, were emotionally distant. The day they laughed off my questions about finances, asking me mockingly, with what money, was a painfully humiliating reminder of my dependency. This realization pushed me to reconsider my silence about their treatment towards me. I had never shared with anyone in the family how I felt. They weren't overtly abusive, just attached, and I feared worse treatment if I spoke up. Yet, I couldn't help but wonder if things might have been different if my grandparents had known the truth about how my parents treated me. After a particularly sharp argument that underscored their disdain, I decided I couldn't stay any longer. I had been saving money from a part-time job and, without a clear plan, I chose to leave home. I was prepared to sleep on park benches if it meant not having to endure their coldness any longer. I also resolved to break my silence and seek help from family members, despite not being close to them. This turned out to be a wise decision. I packed what I could, left home, and went straight to my best friend's house. Her parents, understanding my plight, offered me a place to stay. That night, I reached out to some of my dad's cousins for support. One of my uncles, a respected older captain, responded. He didn't promise immediate solutions but assured me he would handle the situation. In the meantime, I would need to stay away from my parents, which I was already doing. Knowing he was on my side was a tremendous relief and gave me hope that things might change for the better. After spending several hours alone with my thoughts, the evening brought a surge of calls and messages on my phone, all from my parents. Although I ignored their calls, I did read the messages they sent. It turned out that my uncle, true to his promise, had contacted a lawyer to initiate legal action against my parents for misusing funds meant for my education, as specified in my grandparents' will. The messages from my parents were filled with pleas for me to reconsider. They claimed they would take responsibility for my tuition fees if only I would speak to my uncle to dissuade him from pursuing the lawsuit. They expressed regret over their actions, explaining that they had already given the money to my sister, Isla, who was about to buy a house she loved. They argued that it would be cruel to ask for the money back from her now, promising instead to cover my college expenses themselves. All they needed was for me to convince my uncle to drop the case. My uncle had already told my parents he was serious about taking legal action, having discussed this with a lawyer who was also a family friend, and he intended to ensure they paid for their actions. My parents sounded genuinely concerned over the potential consequences. Feeling a mixture of frustration and curiosity, I decided to call them. I didn't have a clear plan on what to say. I just wanted to hear them out one last time. They answered immediately, pouring out apologies and explanations, admitting they had been under stress and regretted not taking my feelings more seriously. They confessed they had always felt distant from me but begged for one last chance to make things right. However, they maintained that asking Isla to return the money was something they couldn't do, as it would be too harsh on her. This conversation clarified their priorities clearly. Their inability to prioritize my needs over Isla's indicated to me that their patterns were unlikely to change. I ended the call resolved not to intervene with my uncle's plans. Their actions had shown me where I stood, and it was time for me to stand firm. 5 days ago, I decided that I wanted my money back, fully aware that Isla had not yet completed her house purchase, and the funds were still untouched. Since making that decision, I've avoided contact and even blocked them during a heated moment, although I later regretted some harsh words I had said. Throughout this ordeal, my uncle has been a steadfast ally. We keep our conversations brief and to the point, mainly because he's already doing so much for me, and I don't want to burden him with my doubts about suing my parents, especially after their recent offer to fund my college tuition. And I've resolved to reclaim my money. The settlement my parents proposed doesn't sit well with me, primarily because I don't trust their intentions. Their offer to cover my tuition and other expenses semester by semester pales in comparison to having complete control over the funds my grandparents left me. With this money, I could potentially cover my education without depleting the entire sum, especially if I secure a scholarship, leaving me with some savings. Accepting their offer would mean starting from scratch financially after graduation, without any fallback. Despite maintaining regular contact with my uncle and recently asking him for additional financial support to move out of my best friend's house, where I felt I was overstaying my welcome, I've chosen not to disclose my ongoing concerns to him. My best friend and her family, despite the added strain of my presence and their own busy household, have been nothing but supportive. Yet, I feel it's time for me to move on and not impose further. Some people have criticized me for feeling entitled to this money, suggesting I should either work through college or take out loans like most do. But given the circumstances of my family's promises and the assets left by my grandparents, I believe it is not only my right but also my responsibility to manage these funds wisely and ensure my educational and financial future. I am simply pursuing what rightfully belongs to me. My grandparents set aside a college fund specifically for me to ensure that I wouldn't need to explore other, less desirable financial avenues like many do. I don't believe it's entitled to assert my right to this fund. In fact, it seems more entitled of my parents to divert these funds to my sister so she could purchase a house beyond her means. This, despite them also inheriting money from my grandparents. Moreover, my grandparents on my mother's side are still alive and could have provided financial assistance if truly necessary. My maternal grandfather recently labeled me a brat and entitled in an email after learning from my mother that my uncle was aiding me in legally challenging my parents. I chose to block that email address without responding. My relationship with my maternal grandparents has never been close, and I see no value in their attempts to impart lessons or morals, which I perceive as merely echoes of my parents' sentiments aimed at undermining me. Meanwhile, my uncle advises me to concentrate on my studies and securing the scholarship I aspire to. He handles the legal matters. This arrangement spares me constant worry and allows me to focus on my academic and personal growth. My uncle, whom I trust completely, seems to understand the need for this and stands by me, a rare ally in my current situation. As I prepare to start college and leave these familial conflicts behind, I find solace in the fact that these challenges are only temporary. Recently, I moved into an apartment arranged by my uncle, where I share space with an older, understanding roommate. While my uncle covers the rent, he encourages me to pay for my own groceries to learn financial responsibility. I appreciate his belief in my ability to manage my finances, as I do have some savings and a part-time job. This setup not only helps me prepare for the future, but also gives me a sense of independence and control over my life. Despite his significant efforts on my behalf, I believe what he's asking me to handle is quite manageable. Regarding the ongoing lawsuit, he's been transparent, updating me whenever necessary. My parents have received the legal notices and are prepared to negotiate. Currently, we're engaged in mediation sessions, although this might escalate to a court battle if an agreement isn't reached. My parents appear eager to resolve this before it goes to trial, and our lawyer is optimistic that we can recover the full amount very soon. We had to opt for a virtual mediation session due to our tight schedules, which suited me fine as I preferred not to meet my parents in person. Throughout the session, my parents were visibly anxious, readily conceding their mistakes. They even revisited their initial offer to fund my college education, but I firmly rejected this. My stance was clear. I simply wanted my savings returned, and they had no right to challenge this decision. After some disagreement, they proposed another mediation session in a few days, and my lawyer anticipates a resolution then. I'm confident that neither Isla nor my parents will misuse the funds during this brief period. They understand the consequences this could bring. Speaking of Isla, I do feel a bit of sympathy for her. She has been vocal about her dream of homeownership, frequently discussing her plans to buy and decorate a house. It's unfortunate she won't realize this dream now, but she should not have accepted the funds if she couldn't afford them independently. Despite our rocky history, I don't harbor any resentment towards Isla. We've grown out of our childhood squabbles and have been quite amicable in recent years. We haven't spoken since I moved out, and I'm not sure she knew that our parents were using my college savings to support her housing dreams. She hasn't cut communication with me, so I assume she was unaware, but she'll soon learn the truth when our parents request the funds back. Navigating this period of my life hasn't been straightforward, especially dealing with family issues that could easily be attributed to my parents. It's painful to dwell on it, so I'm shifting my focus to my college journey instead. I've been fortunate to receive acceptance letters from several universities, but I'm anxiously awaiting a response from my top choice, where I hope to secure a scholarship. Even without the scholarship, I'd be content. I just need to know where I stand. Currently, I'm on the wait list, but remaining hopeful. The college's location is ideal as it's near my uncle's place, just a 4-hour drive. Lately, we've been spending more time together. His children are all grown up and busy, so it works out well for both of us. He's become a kind of father figure to me, especially since he recently offered me a place to stay during semester breaks. His rough exterior belies a genuine warmth, which was evident when he extended the invitation, which I gladly accepted. On another positive note, my parents have agreed to return the funds they had taken, which were intended for my college. My uncle, my lawyer, and I are pleased with this resolution. Additionally, my sister Isla reached out to apologize after learning what had happened. She was under the impression that our parents were helping her with a home loan, not knowing the funds were originally for my education. Our relationship is neutral for now, but I'm open to the possibility of reconnecting more deeply in the future. As for college life, it's been fantastic so far. I started last month and have been quite busy. My roommate and I have hit it off, and the classes have been engaging. My uncle and aunt were instrumental in helping me move and settle in. Their support has been a cornerstone of my success, and I am profoundly grateful. I've also secured the scholarship at my preferred college, which means the financial legacy left by my grandparents will provide a solid foundation for my future. Life is looking up, and I'm eager to make the most of this new chapter, hoping to make my family proud.